Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Reverse Sweep Show. This is your host SS, and joining me as ever is my co-host AB. We took a short break. We are back, reveling in the fantastic display of batting by Shubman Gill and India closing on in a victory in the Edgbaston Test match. What's the feel like, AB?
I think we are really well placed right now in the match, and specifically with Ben Stokes also gone in the last ball of the session. I think this might as well be the last session of the match. And for context for all our viewers, right now it's the end of first session of day 5 of the second Test match, and India are on the verge of their first ever victory in Birmingham.
Fantastic. Yeah, we have been glued to the cricket even though we didn't pod last week. But we are back with a new episode as well, which we are going to talk about very soon. It's going to be a very fun, interesting episode because we have talked so much about cricketing dynasties, and then we went into the anti-dynasty world, teams that fared continuously versus these top dynasties. And today we are going to do a hypothetical 11, which we did a lot about in season one, but we are now back in season two, also doing a similar sort. Players who did pretty well against these dynasty teams. And I think AB, one of the most important components is how do we construct such a team?
Quick timeout. If you are loving this dive into cricket's wild twists and turns, hit that like button and subscribe to the Reverse Sweep Show.
And if you've got that one friend who can't stop talking about cricket, share this episode with them and bring them into the squad.
Yeah, so specifically when I'm looking at it, so we are looking at players who pulled up their A game against the so-called dynasties. A lot of these cases, we have already spoken about these dynasties, like the West Indies from the 80s or the Australia from the 2000s. So we are specifically looking out for those players who pulled up their iconic performances against these teams, who denied them their era-defining moments or some of those key victories. And in a lot of these cases, we'll also see that these are players who are kind of like lone wolves for their teams. They don't get a lot of support from their teammates, and hence their teams can't rise to that level of a dynasty. So that is one thing that we are looking at. We are looking at players across formats. So we are not limiting ourselves to test matches. We are looking at ODIs as well. And then specifically in my case, as I want to look at not just the dynasties that we have spoken about, but also across eras. So going
Mhm.
even before the 80s or even more in the recent times. So that is what I'm looking at. How about you?
Yeah, that's a very interesting aspect of how you look at it and how look I differently. I would want to focus on the big dynasties that we have had, the great West Indies dynasties and the Australian dynasty of 21st century, and players who did very well against them, and also players who had their careers intersected by these dynasties. So not just catching their final leg of those dynasties and making a lot of impact, but want to see their careers run in parallel, and they have had multiple chances to come up against them, because you might have had one good series against these mighty teams, but then they would have found you out, and then you just struggle against them. But we want to look at consistency as well. So having said that, and not wasting any further time, we will dive straight into it. Our usual format, starting off with openers, getting into the middle order, followed by wicketkeepers, spinners, and fast bowlers. So openers for me, um, I go for Gavaskar. Had a stellar record against West Indies. I was pouring into the statistics, especially his first series when he made 774 runs. It might be a figure that Shubman Gill breaks in this current series versus England. But yeah, overall he had a, I think, average of more than 50. Made a lot of runs against the Great West Indies side, even though there are question marks over his later thing that he didn't probably face the best of the best attack. But still, uh, genuinely a great of Indian batting, Indian opening batter, and I think he will make the cut for me. Accompanied by a gritty opener, also a captain, and just like Shubman Gill had a stellar start to his captaincy, Graham Smith made a lot of runs against England, but a lot of runs against that Australian great team as well. Batted with a broken hand, which we have often talked about on this podcast, but also made a lot of hundreds as well, back-to-back centuries, a double century, and led Australia to face their first defeat against South Africa. And South Africa went on to do the three-peat, which we talked about as well. So Gavaskar and Graham Smith are my two openers, AB.
Now, for me, There's so many players that I could have thought about, but then Sunil Gavaskar is an absolute no-brainer for me as well for his sheer dominance against that West Indian pace attack. I go with Sunil Gavaskar as well for pretty much the similar reasons as you spoke about, SS. The second one, I again look at a similar time period around the 2010s, and I go with Alistair Cook from England. He scored heaps of runs when England visited Australia and defeated Australia in Australia. And again, he did the same thing when England won a Test series in India. He scored around 700 plus runs in 7 innings in that Ashes series down under. And that also included a double century, by the way. And that was almost Bradman-esque. So I wanted to look at Alistair Cook for the 2010s. Although England could never reach that mini dynasty or a dynasty stage, but I feel they were always able to create those upsets, or they were able to deny these strong teams a win here and there. So Alistair Cook, a major part of that win. So I go with Alistair Cook.
And I think
Now,
also on Alistair Cook, when he was man of the series in the two biggest wins that England ever had. I think he was man of the series when England defeated India and India as well. So such dominance over there. I mean, I think this was probably the case where for me it was either Smith versus Cook. I just went with Smith because I felt he was a bigger part of South Africa as a team as well, became the mini dynasty which we spoke of. But I think Cook is also an equally good shout.
now let's move to the middle order. SS, who are your numbers 3, 4, 5?
3, 4, 5 for me. 3 and 4 are possibly the two greatest batsmen of the current generation, or at least in the last 25 years. Brian Lara, he had an exceptional record versus Australia. He was always a thorn on their side. Those famous innings in Sydney, but also in Caribbean as well. A lot of Australian pacers often rate him ahead of even Sachin because on his best day, on his Sunday, Brian Lara was almost untouchable, and he was so good to watch, so flamboyant. Uh, Made many a chase and many a great Australian bowler sweat a lot. So Lara for me at number three gives me that left-hander as well. And number four for me is possibly the greatest batsman ever, Sachin. Sachin Tendulkar had 20 centuries against the great Australian team, nine, I think nine in uh, test matches, 11 in ODIs again, and he also troubled them with his spin bowling as well in ODI cricket. So if you are making an all format 11, he could also jump and open up for me. I was looking at some other options as well. Kalis was springing to my mind, Sangakkara was springing to my mind. But I think when you have options of Lara and Sachin at 3 and 4, which we have seen with our own eyes, I think it's difficult to move away from them. So 3 and 4 for me. 5, I wanted to place a good wicket-keeper batters because of the format of the team that I was looking for. I looked at options. Rishabh Pant came to my mind. MS Dhoni came to my mind. Alex Stewart as well made 8,000 runs for England. Uh, I went with Andy Flower. He has great record against India, but was equally stubborn against Australia as well. Again, a ferocious cricketer. Now we know him as a elite coach of modern times, and he was also a wicket keeper. And I think he's genuinely, when we think about this Kryptonite 11, he would be that guy in that team, in that underdog team of Zimbabwe. He will always stand up and perform well against the top teams. So
He's your typical lone wolf.
Typical lone wolf, absolutely. Andy Flower troubled Harbhajan and Anil Kumble a lot, made double centuries versus India as well. Indian team at home was almost like a dynasty in 90s and 2000s. We'll never lose a lot of series against such opposition. So Lara at 3, Sachin at 4, and Andy Flower as my wicketkeeper at number 5.
Those are some really strong picks, SS. And in my case, I have one common pick, which is Sachin Tendulkar at number 4 for his stellar record against Australia. Australia being the dynasty that we are talking about, and Sachin being the kryptonite to that. At number 3, I have another player who has a stellar record against Australia, and we cannot look past VVS Lakshman and his heroics. We spoke about these players having these iconic moments against these dynastic oppositions, and none better than what VVS Lakshman had at Eden Gardens in 2001, one of the most epic test matches of all times, one of the most epic performances of all times, the 281 against Australia. And then he's someone who would always fare well against Australian team, whether it be in India or in Australia. So many instances of that we have seen. Plus also that gritty innings in Mohali, 70 odd, I think, batting with the tail to win the
He's
match.
had so many. He's 167 in Sydney. I think when Adelaide Test match, when Dravid made 233, he also made like 140, 150. So he was always there. When India was performing well versus Australia, Lakshman had to be there.
So for me, Lakshman is one player. If we talk about the topic of Kryptonite 11 against these dynastic opposition, Lakshman is an example that I would use to explain to people what a Kryptonite means.
He will come on the thumbnail of the episode as well.
Absolutely. So Lakshman at 3, Sachin at 4, and now for 5, I come to the contemporary times. Someone who has caused a lot of pain to all of us Indian fans, whether it be the World Test Championship of the
I
last
know where it's
cycle,
going.
whether it be the Cricket World Cup that was hosted in India in 2023. I had to look at Travis Head because this Indian team would have been an absolute dynasty otherwise. We'd have so much more silverware had it not been for this one particular player. So Travis Head for me is at number 5 in my middle order of this Kryptonite 11 team because he somehow always pulls the best game against an opposition in blue. So those are
Yeah,
my
I
picks
think
now.
to 6 and 7, genuinely these are the areas where people have their main all-rounder and wicketkeeper, but you have twisted things around. My wicketkeeper bats at 5, so 6 is like a proper batter for me, and he is someone that you've already mentioned, very, very special, Lakshman. I think, as I already mentioned, that he's amazing record versus that Australian team. So I was never going to miss him from
I
my 11.
I almost thought that maybe you forgot about Eden Gardens 2001 Test match.
As an Indian cricket fan, that will be a blasphemy. So VVS Lakshman for me comes at number 6. For my number 7, I go for a genuine all-rounder. He's the captain of my team as well, Imran Khan. Amazing record overall. Uh, he had a 7 for in the Test match that Pakistan beat West Indies and became the world number 1. He had an average of around 18 versus West Indies with the ball, and even an ODI is pretty much like that as well, and a genuine bat as well, and so much inspiration. I was reading
Amazing.
and yeah, I was reading and we were discussing pre-recording about his record in the last 10 years. He was averaging over 50 with the bat, better than even Sir Vivian Richards, and was averaging less than 20 with the ball. So it was almost like Kohli and Bumrah rolled into one for the last 10 years of his life.
Yeah,
So
and it's almost Jordan-esque, right? Coming back from the
yeah,
retirement, winning more championships, rings, or whatever.
yeah,
So
yeah. So Imran Khan was very difficult to look past. So he's my 7. So 6 and 7 for me. VVS because Andy Flower bats at 5 for me, and Imran Khan. I can actually make VVS bat at 5 as well. That was usually his position, at least earlier in his career. So Andy Flower it could be at 6 for me as wicketkeeper, and Imran Khan as my captain at number 7.
okay, so for me, SS number 6, I have to go and look at the best all-rounder the world has ever had. So I look at Sir Garfield Sobers. As we spoke about, so I want to go back in time. I'm not just limiting myself to the dynasties that we spoke of. So going a little behind time into the 60s and 70s, Sir Garfield Sobers, over 8,000 runs in Test cricket, over 200 wickets, one of the best all rounders of all times. And even like Don Bradman once said for his 254 in Australia that it was one of the best test innings that he had ever seen on Australian soil. So I got to pick the best all rounder of all times, someone who always played amazingly well against Australia and England, the two strongest teams of that time. So that is my number 6. Now coming to number 7, I pick up my wicket keeper. Although he can also bat up the order, but I have Rishabh Pant. Again, someone from the modern times. I have someone who can play those match-winning innings. Has had those iconic moments. Been a kind of a party pooper, you can say, defeating Australia in Australia. The second time India did that, Rishabh Pant was one of the main protagonists of that particular series. So I have Rishabh Pant at number 7, although he could also bat higher up in the order. So he's also the wicket keeper for me. Now on to the ballers SS, who are your picks.
Yeah, because we have so many good options, especially from the 80s, so many all-rounders. We had the Fab Four of all-rounders: Kapil Dev, Imran Khan, Richard Hadley, uh, as well as who am I missing? Kapil Dev, Imran Khan, Richard Hadley,
Ian Botham.
Ian Botham. Yes, Ian Botham. So I was looking at all the options at how many of I can squeeze, and then we also had Jack Callis as well, which kind of misses out unfortunately because you have such stellar batting lineup. So I was trying to squeeze as many as possible. Imran Khan I was able to squeeze. I think the next one I'm going to squeeze in is Richard Hadley. An average around 22 versus the great West Indies as well as the Australian team. He took a 9 for when Australia were defeated by New Zealand in Australia, which never happens, but he was there in 1985. 86 matches, 431 test wickets. Great. Again, like Andy Flower, Richard Hadley was like a one-man team in himself when New Zealand were being represented in the 80s. So
And we
Hadley
also
had to be there.
spoke about it in one of the earlier episodes on the pod. I think the second or the third episode when we spoke of New Zealand and their
Yeah.
entire evolution and arc of New Zealand cricket. I think we spoke about an entire era which was defined by Richard Headley. So New Zealand before Richard Headley and after him or since him were like completely different teams, and that's the kind of impact that he has had.
Yeah. Yeah, great bowler, great action as well. So even though I had a lot of options in this position, I think Hadley at 8 was always going to be there for me. Uh, Number 9, I was looking for a spinner, and I wanted because of the all-round capabilities, I could go in for actually two spinners as well. So Harbhajan Singh, someone who we watched quite closely, always a thorn in the eyes of the Aussies. Great record. I think who can forget the 2001 series? He took a hat trick, three test matches, 31 wickets or something crazy. And till the monkey gets scandal and all, he was always in there. I mean, even in 2011 World Cup match, Ponting made a century, but still Harbhajan got him. Harbhajan Ponting was again a big rivalry. Harbhajan Hayden, Harbhajan Simons, so many, but Harbhajan was always there. Even though with Ashwin coming in, we have almost forgotten Harbhajan as probably he will not even feature in the top five spinners for India in history, which is sad. But Harbhajan against Australia was a different beast altogether. So I cannot ignore him in a Kryptonite 11 versus that Australian team. Harbhajan for me comes at number 9. And then I'm looking at two genuine bowlers. I'm looking at Dale Steyn, just like Graham Smith. He was a pivotal part of that South African team that did so well against Australia, was always at it. I mean, he was like world number one for 5 or 6 years in a row, and he was genuinely feared in South Africa, away in Australia on those wickets. I mean, exceptional record versus Australia. I mean, you had Donald and Pollock, and they struggled in the past against Australia, but not this guy. He got the last bit of it, but then he was also consistent throughout the 2010s. I think Steyn, I cannot look past him, and definitely over Anderson. And last but not the least, my number 11 is going to be a leg spinner because I already have an off spinner. I go for Abdul Qadir. Now, for Indian cricket fans, especially of our generation, we know Sachin smacking him everywhere, and people forget how great he was a spinner. He took 6 for 16 versus West Indies in Faisalabad, and he was also part of that world number one Pakistan team that won in West Indies. So it's a very good record against West Indies typically as a spinner, and he always bamboozled the Caribbeans with his leg spinners and googlies. So Abdul Qadir as my number 11.
Interesting picks, Assess, and honestly, I really like the picks that you have from that 80s team of Pakistan, the late 80s team of Pakistan that went to that number one spot for a little while in between that West Indian dynasty. So that's really interesting because for me, honestly, I skipped that part. But coming to my picks, at number 8, I have another all rounder since we have such a plethora of amazing all rounders when we look at the entire history. I go with Andrew Flintoff. And again, coming from that Kryptonite theme and linking it to that Australian dynasty and the 2005 Ashes, one of the most iconic Ashes. So I go with Andrew Flintoff, and he comes in at number 8 for me. Amazing bowler, can bat for me as well. So for the impact that he has had in upsetting the Australian team, I go with Andrew Flintoff. Number 9 for me is another pick that you have also picked in your team, which is Richard Headley. Amazing performances against Australia, England, and just to add on to all the stats that you mentioned already, he also had one series in Australia where he picked 33 wickets in 3 matches.
Wow.
comparing that to Harbhajan. Harbhajan also had 31 wickets,
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was almost at the same level. So yeah, can't look past Richard Hadley. Also, he is another all-rounder. So an all-rounder of Richard Hadley's caliber coming in at number 9 for me also gives me that deep batting.
Yeah, Gautam Gambhir will be very happy with your team composition.
Definitely, and he'll be even happier when he hears who my number 10 is, because the number 10 for me is one of the best all-rounders that India has ever produced. It's Kapil Dev,
Wow,
and
Kapil Dev walking in at number 10. That's crazy.
yeah, so he's there at number 10 for me. Of course, he could also bat higher up the order, but when we are talking about a Kryptonite 11, he is up there because of all his performances against the West Indian team, lifting the trophy in '83, breaking that West Indian period of dominance in white ball cricket.
It's also
Plus,
got a
also
very
he
good
has,
average, very good average versus the West Indies as well. Yeah,
yeah, he has an average of 25 versus West Indies, so that's
that's decent,
pretty good.
decent
Yeah,
number.
it's
Yeah,
fairly good for all the ways that he can contribute. In he is also a captaincy material for me. So I have Kapil Dev at number 10, and for number 11, I have to pick a spinner, and I go with the highest wicket taker from India. I go with Anil Kumble, and he has been a workhorse for Indian team in those 90s and 2000s time period. He has picked up heaps of wickets against this Australian team, 100 plus wickets in 20 tests versus Australia. So he has had dominant performances, impactful performances throughout. So I go with Anil Kumble at number 11.
nice. That looks nice. Let's come back to our captaincy, wicket keeping, wicket keeper, and 12th man. So, captain for me is Imran Khan. Vice captain is Graham Smith, wicketkeeper Andy Flower, and for 12th man, I was really scratching my head because I did not want to do disservice to the likes of Sangakkara, Jayawardene, Rahul Dravid. There are so many, Carl Hooper, Javed Miandad, Zahir Abbas. There were so many names that, okay, who can I give justice by at least picking them in 12th man? I finally picked Jack Callis because I felt that, yeah, he's probably the greatest all-rounder, and I did not even give a mention of him, even though we had so many of them. So Callis has a decent record. I think latter part of the career he picked up against Australia. So he's my 12th man. Who are your shouts of the positions and delegation?
So for me, I already mentioned Kapil Dev as one of the captaincy candidates for me, and you can't look past what Kapil Dev did with that Indian team in '83. So a very charismatic captain can create those impactful performances, can lead from the front. So I have Kapil Dev, and if we are talking about a Kryptonite 11, that has to be the hallmark of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
upsetting a dynasty.
Yeah,
So I go with Kapil Dev as my captain, Alistair Cook as my vice captain, Rishabh Pant as my wicket keeper. And for 12th man, I was looking at, of course, players like Jack Cullis, but I feel I have a lot of all rounders in my team. I have a very strong batting lineup. One place where I haven't picked enough players or I'm not that strong in is the spin department. So
hmm
I go with Harbhajan Singh. Again, one of the best kryptonite players, if you can call it, always brought his A game against Australia. We
Yeah,
already know about the 2001 series. VVS Lakshman, of course, playing his role with the bat, but then Harbhajan picking up heaps of wickets in that series. So I go with Harbhajan as my 12th man.
perfect. Let's summarize our 11. So I will go first. Sunil Gavaskar and Graham Smith as my openers. Graham Smith also my vice captain. Brian Lara, Sachin Tendulkar, Andy Flower at number 5 as a wicketkeeper. VVS Lakshman, Imran Khan as my captain at number 7, Richard Hadley, Harbhajan Singh, Dale Steyn, and Abdul Qadir with Jack Callis as my 12th man.
For me, it's Sunil Gavaskar, Alistair Cook as openers, VVS Lakshman number 3, Sachin at number 4, Travis Head at number 5. Then I have my all-rounder, the best all-rounder that we have had in Test cricket, Gary Sobers. Then Rishabh Pant, the keeper batter at number 7, Flintoff, Richard Headley at numbers 8 and 9, Kapil Dev at 10, and Anil Kumble at number 11. My captain is Kapil Dev, vice captain Alistair Cook, wicket keeper is Rishabh Pant, and the 12th man is Harbhajan Singh.
There you have it, guys. That was the Kryptonite 11. It was fun thinking about all the players, especially looking back nostalgically at the players who did well against Australia, but also looking at past players who were always a thorn against that great Caribbean side of the West Indies. We will be back with another episode next week and hope you like this one. If you like, do like, share, and subscribe, and follow our channel on YouTube as well as on Spotify and any other podcasting medium you hear our podcasts on. Till then, goodbye from SSNAB.